Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast. Jack has put himself on mute because we're a finely oiled machine after doing 300 podcasts. Today, we are joined by Super Dan Weston. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Yeah, hi Ross. How are you?
Marvelous, mate. Absolutely marvelous.
I've got to take you to task, unfortunately. Last week, I listened to a podcast. And you described me again as a budding analyst.
You'll get there, Dan. You'll get there one day. We believe in you.
I've got dreams, Max.
It's just to entice people. It'd be like, actually, Dan Weston, he's not that far a tale. People don't understand the work that's gone into your career, Dan. So sometimes it's better to trick people into signing up for the Patreon than actually getting them involved.
Okay.
But we're also joined by the newly haircutted Max Rowe-Brown. You're looking very well groomed. You look about 10 years younger, mate.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a weight off my scalp, I can tell you.
I can imagine. Well, Max, you look beautiful. And Jack, you've got yourself off mute now, have you?
Yeah, I plugged the thing in and then I clicked the button. Lucky I let you talk, wasn't it? Otherwise, the whole show would have been a disaster. We haven't had an episode where everyone sat around miming.
There we go. First time for everything, and
thanks for
special. Christmas special, quite possibly. Jack, messages for our listeners. If I'm going to turn this round on you,
all right. Messages for our listeners. Well, first we're going to be talking about the IPL. We'll be talking about today's game. The Delhi Capitals still alive. We'll be talking about yesterday's game.
Gujarat Titans smashed LSG.
Stuff happened at the top of the table. We'll be talking about Monday's game, which was pointless. And we'll be talking about. We'll do a little bit on Brendon McCullum, who looks like will it be why has he been offered the job? We'll go through all of that. But the messages you need to hear right now are that you need to like and subscribe if you're watching YouTube. You need to just click subscribe or maybe review. You know, on Spotify, we're up to like 250 reviews. For a Spotify listener, go and smash 5-star. Let's get to triple century there. And there's a bunch of stuff in the show notes which is really cool. One, we can get you 10% off cricket using the code TC and show notes. 2, patreon.com/one for us directly.
Jack, you get some chat in the live chat. The volume's down, so while you get sorted there, sign up for Patreon / Cricket Podcast, and also go on Twitter and Instagram at the Cricket Pod. So thank you for correcting Jack in the live chat, much appreciated. Max, you were commentating on today's game. Would you like to give a nice Max summary?
Sure can. So Rajasthan Royals v Delhi Capitals. It was a massive game for one of them and a fairly important game for the other one. Delhi Capitals probably needed to win this to be, I'd say to have any sort of hope of getting into the top 4. Probably they would have struggled without it, and also to keep the table remotely interesting by bringing Rajasthan Royals back into the potential of teams who could slip out. It was the Royals who batted first, and they did okay. We saw a familiar face at number 3 in Ravichandran Ashwin, his swashbuckling self. It was an ebb and flow performance from him. It looked like being a total disaster. Then it looked like a stroke of genius. And then it middled out to about sort of okay. But he scored 50 at number 3, which worked pretty well. Padikal finally got some runs at a reasonable lick rather than just prodding around. And it all looked set for what looked like a challenging 170, 175 chase. But some tight bowling at the end, the inability of Rassie van der Dusen to do what Shimron Hetmeyer has done throughout the IPL this year, and having a number 11 at number 8, all conspired to mean that the Royals rather petered out to 166 off their 20 overs. Delhi Capitals, in response, looked like making a real meal of it as they scored 1 run off their first 2 overs, and arguably, had Trent Bolt reviewed it, would have been down 2 wickets. But no one listened to the man who was imploring them all to give it a go. And that allowed Mitch Marsh to score 89 off 62 and pretty comfortably see Delhi Capitals home with 2 overs near enough to spare. and make a real statement as to their plans for sneaking into the playoffs.
Nicely done, Max. Nicely done. I thought when it came to Delhi's chase at the end, it was Mitch Marsh. He's magic. Jack, you rate Mitch Marsh more than anyone in world cricket. He's
possibly higher than Shirin Hetmyer.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, on your Dan Westerner meter, which I can imagine you have, that's what I assume your kind of data analysis tool is called. Where does Mitch Marsh stand in the kind of T20 rankings for you? A good asset for this Delhi team, or not so much?
For me, I still think the jury's out a little bit, to be honest with you. I know that sounds pretty insane after the guy takes 2 for 25 and hits 90 off about 55 balls, but I'm still not massively sold. I mean, today he absolutely smashed pace bowling, which we know that he's very, very capable of doing. Still think that he can be tired down by real quality spin, particularly the ball turning away from him. He only faced 11 balls today of the ball turning away from him, of which he struck at 109 and was dismissed from it. So that tells you quite a lot. Maybe DC got their bowling plans to him a little bit. Rajasthan got their bowling plans a little bit wrong to him as well. But I don't know. Rajasthan also have got like this kind of dynamic where they've only really got 5 frontline bowlers, so they don't really have a choice. So that's. I think what I'm trying to say is I think that the matchup was pretty good for him today overall, and that helps definitely. I think he's decent. Do I think he's a world beater? Absolutely not. But yeah, he's fine. He's fine. I certainly don't see him as being any worse than Marcus Stoinis. Probably better. Probably. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. No, definitely not. Yeah, definitely. And I could easily think of half a dozen or more, probably quite a few more overseas players who are less deserving of a place in an 11 who have played on a regular basis this season.
Jack, your microphone is still busted, by the way. On YouTube, not so good. So, Max, you mentioned around Trent Boult not getting his way with the LBW decision, and there was 2 instances of a little bit of bad luck, I suppose. You had Charhol bowling David Warner, and the bails didn't come off, and they had Trent Boult who had Mitch Marsh stone dead LBW at the start.
Yeah, I'd say one of those is bad luck, and the other one was probably maybe more down to decision making rather than luck on the side of the Royals. He looked convinced, and then it kind of fizzled out. No one else was bothered, but I mean, he looked pretty certain that it had brushed some boot as it transpired. So I don't know why he didn't plead his case a bit more with the captain. And the other thing is, you've got 2 reviews, so I don't understand why you're not using it if you're that sure. But hey, that's how it went. They missed out on a wicket, and it cost them 89 runs. Never mind. David Warner, up until the end, it was almost better to keep him at the crease because he wasn't exactly fluent in his batting performance. But Mitch Marsh kind of dug him out of a bit of a hole with that, and he sped up towards the end. But yeah, I mean, that ball from Charhol to David Warner was so good and deserving of a wicket. And why is there giggling?
Well, it's because Jack can't sort his microphone out.
No, I sorted it out. I sorted it out, and then the first thing I did after I sorted it out was knock it off the table, which I thought was good.
Okay. I was confused. Yeah, I looked up and everyone was laughing. Yeah, I mean that ball from Charhol deserved a wicket with how good it was, and it deserved a wicket because it hit the stumps. Yeah. It was
Max, I know what happened.
Pure bad luck.
Yeah, I know what happened. So I have I'm in a
is he here captain?
I'm in a very tight battle with top place in our Discord fantasy league in IPL, and I'm pretty much the only one out of us three who actually remembered to do it. I think I forgot 2 or 3 times, and it was Swami who is top. He had David Warner as vice captain. I had Yuzi Charhol as vice captain, and it's those fine margins that are going to decide the Patreon ship, isn't it?
The world's against you.
Yeah, it's just life. What I would like to talk about is Hetmeyer.
Guys, before you move on, sorry about the Zing bails. I mean, I've seen this happen now quite a few times since we've moved to the Zing bails. Is this a problem that actually we need to resolve?
As in, are they heavier?
Ross also, yeah, exactly. And Ross, have you ever thought about maybe crafting some of your own bails for when you play at the weekend and trying to boost the average up a little bit?
Lead bails.
I typically don't have a problem with getting bowled too often. Normally, it's me doing a stupid shot and getting myself caught or getting dismissed LBW. So who knows?
Ross doesn't leave the stumps open to being bowled. He just stands in front of them.
My stance at shift around Shandapur, mine.
Ross bats on off stump and gets given out LBW, and every single time it happens, he's like, "How am I LBW? How has this possibly been given?"
Disgraceful. It's disgraceful.
Back to the bails, though. I mean, if it lights up and they can prove on Snicker that the ball's hit the stumps, should it be out?
No, it's not. The bail's got to come off. I think it's just that we see it more often because we have better cameras. They're not. I think the difference in weight is pretty negligible. That one today, it barely hit the stump. I don't think that there's
umpire's cool.
Well, I mean, but if he'd kicked it, then yeah, it would be. But he didn't, did it? It hit the stumps and the bail didn't come off. It's unlucky. Should have reviewed that Marsh one though. That was thick.
Yeah, it was. Speaking of thick, Rassie van der Dussen. So how Hetmeyer has had a fantastic season. By all measures, he has been absolutely essential to this Rajasthan Royals team. Rassie van der, and I want to talk about
why he's not there.
I know he's having a baby.
I thought you were about to be like,
no, I'm not trying to help you. I know, I appreciate that. But what I want to talk about is like the thickness from the Rajasthan Royals management team. Here.
He is thick too. Nathan
Coulter-Nile has been injured for what? 4 weeks now, 5 weeks, and they've had the opportunity to get a replacement in and just have chosen not to, and was in this kind of sick space of trying to be a hitter in the middle order and offer a couple of overs. Why, Dan, I'm going to come to you on this one. Why would they go with Rassie van der Dussen here? It's, in my head, Hetmeyer and Rassie van der Dussen aren't in the same class or category when it comes to T20.
Well, I think it's not even about that so much, but the fact that they're just 2 completely different players. Like, you've got Hetmeyer, who's obviously got a really high gear when required, and then you've got sort of Rassie van der Dussen is kind of like more of the accumulator guy, starts pretty slowly and then might try and hit after he's faced 20 balls. And I mean, if you're looking at someone who's effectively should be a number 7, it's not that. You'd have been better off batting at 3 than Mr. Ashwin. And I think that there's a couple of implications from what you're saying actually, which are really relevant. The fact that they haven't replaced Coulter-Nile meant that they went into this game with 3 overseas without Hetmeyer, and they left a few guys like Mitch or Nisham, Obed on the bench, yeah, I think that probably is an issue for them. They probably should have done something about that Coulter-Nile thing, replacing him. And we've seen other teams make those replacements. And don't forget as well, if you replace a player, you get retention rights on them for the subsequent season. So, we've seen CSK pick up guys like Matisha Pastrana, MI pick up Tristan Stubbs. I mean, they're clearly they're not picking them for now. They're picking them for retention rights for next season, I would imagine. So RR, I think, maybe have missed a trick there. And also, one thing that frustrated me when I watched Rassi Anderson play today was that he was trying to ramp it. And it was embarrassing. Oh my God, I had my head in my hands. Because I honestly believe that the ramp is such a poor option for the vast majority of players. Like, if there's probably 10, 15, 20 players around the world who are unbelievable at it. Like we had Josh Inglis at Leicester last year. I mean, this guy was incredible. I mean, I remember we played up at Durham away, and they had 2 men back in the power play against him because they were so scared of him ramping him. But there's not many players like that. And I'm like, this is the last over, the last second last over. Just put your back through it. If I had any hair left, I'd tear my hair out. The amount of players who think a ramp is a good option in the.
He was also trying to ramp Charlotte.
No, we don't have a track history of being good at ramping. Do you know what I mean?
Like, he was ramping a guy bowling at 79, 80 miles an hour on a pitch that wasn't really coming on.
Yeah.
It's not the percentage shot that he
No,
thought it
really
was,
not.
is it?
It's really not.
Yeah, so that's the bit for me where there's so much talk around the different academies that Rajasthan Royals have around the world, their scouting network, etc., and the way in which they've selected their team. But fundamentally, I think this has been a bit of a major error, and I think you have to have some level of depth in your side, even in a 14-game tournament, you have to have some level of depth. And I think that Rajasthan Royals have not let themselves down and let their fans down as well by not actually doing something.
Family
you
down,
feel let down,
and the
Ross?
country
Do you feel
down.
let down? Is that what this is about?
I do feel let down. As a Royals fan, I feel let down that they had the opportunity to manage themselves in a better way, and today they could have cemented their place in the playoffs. But
They could be challenging for the top 2.
Yeah, instead they fucked about, and now they could. It's unlikely, but they could end up out of the playoffs.
Whoa, yeah, it could happen. Well put.
Yeah. I don't actually have any more on this. I thought it was a good win by Delhi. I thought David Warner, Max Usona said that he was just around. I think when you have someone like Marsh kind of hitting it like he was, and you've only got 160 to chase that, you can afford to have a player like that, unfortunately. And that's the.
You can, but I mean, for a moment, they didn't have a player like that, did they? And Mitch Marsh timed his acceleration pretty well in the end, because it looked bad for him.
I don't know. I think it was probably on that pitch the way to go. I think there is Dave Warner is a really, really good batter. That's not really
hot take cricket podcast.
But what I mean by that is not just from a T20 perspective, a numbers perspective here. Like, he actually is somebody that can play in different conditions and score runs against different bowling attacks, and has dominated Test cricket and has dominated ODI cricket, and has. He must have. What does he have? 15,000 international runs or something ludicrous like that. On a pitch like this, where we saw Chahali was getting the ball to spit all over the place, and we saw quite a few deliveries sort of seam past just the outside edge and stuff like
rear up.
On pitches like that, sometimes having somebody who is really, really good at batting just bat for a bit is extremely helpful for your team, because I don't know if you expose Rovman Powell to those conditions, whether Rovman Powell projects to do that well. I think Rovman Powell probably gets out if they need 8 and over for 15 overs, and he's the guy that has to come in and do it. I think Akshay Patel probably gets out if he's asked to do it. Shardul Thakur, you're not thinking, whoa, a bit tricky here. What we need is Shardul Thakur.
He's got it. He's got it in the bag, mate. How dare you?
The other thing to bear in mind, and we do this quite a lot, we say, if you take this innings out, then that means the rest of the team has to do this. If you take Warner's innings out of this, so it means the rest of the team need to get. What do they? So I'm just going to have to do the maths really quickly. I think it's 109 off 80 balls, off 79 balls. That's pretty easy with 9 wickets in hand. Not being funny. If you can't do that, it's really. So I think what Warner's done there is basically make it a lot easier for all the other guys to potentially come in and swing the bat, and you're giving them a bit of latitude to fail. As it happens, doesn't matter because Mitch Marsh has done it all by himself. He's paid into his lifetime, but that's sort of where I'd come from that. We said it about Kohli, haven't we? If you're chasing 160, he's the best player in the world. Maybe not now, but at certain points in the lifespan of this podcast, he's the best player in the world. Warner's another great example of that. Somebody who's like, he's not going to get phased by Trent Boult nipping the ball around too much. He'll be there, might be 30 off 30, but he's got the shots if he needs to accelerate later. He just lightens the workload on some of the other players. Yeah. That's how I read
it. He maybe iced his score a little at the end, but I take your point.
There was no reason for them to pursue net run rate or anything like that. Like it was all about getting the 2 points, clawing Rajasthan back a little bit, giving themselves the chance of catching somebody if they blow it.
And Rajasthan Royals and RCB both have that propensity. Let's be fair. And we got a super chat from Sudeep. Dan, I'm going to direct this one to you. So, if SRH had kept Warner instead of Kane, would they be in the playoffs or at least challenging for the playoffs?
I'm not sure it's quite as clear cut as that, because the SRH Warner is probably not the DC Warner, given the perhaps the internal issues that there were at the franchise with Warner there. Now, I think where SRH really slipped up was one, paying that much money for Kane Williamson, when I think that they could have just got him for so much cheaper in the auction. You know, gone on record of saying that way before the auction started. And secondly, the knock-on effect of that had on their ability to keep Rashid Khan.
Yeah, and so when it comes to that mismanagement, in the last, maybe 3 days, we've had Sanju Samson be interviewed and Shreyas Iyer be interviewed about kind of people on the board or kind of CEOs, etc., actually getting involved in team selection.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to me to be, one, completely unsurprising, but two, what the hell are they doing? You're literally like, if look at Sunrisers Hyderabad, they must be blowing a hell of a lot of money on the coaches they have on the bench sitting there. They've got some big names. Yeah. And I can imagine quite a lot of other teams are spending some good money having these people around. And then somebody who's not got the cricketing background is starting to influence these decisions. And then the knock-on effect of that is someone like Sanju Samson or Shreyas Iyer, who's, let's be fair, are being judged around future captaincy decisions for India, regardless of format. Then there's a knock-on effect. So how is that allowed to happen? Like it seems a bit baffling to me.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't be allowed to happen. It is ultimately the number one answer to that, because let's face facts. The owners are very successful business people. Mm-hmm. However, whether if they're going to buy the team, they need to delegate that responsibility to the professionals. Not in the IPL, but in some other work that I've done, I've definitely experienced that myself. Mm-hmm. It's not fun. It's not pleasant. It's something that I think that cricket is quite immature about, in terms of that evolvement of the franchise model compared to, say, like Premier League football. I mean, maybe like, I don't know, maybe Abramovich used to tell Chelsea managers like who to pick or whatever. I don't know, or who to buy. But I think that's by and large probably a rarity in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think in cricket, I would say that it's much more commonplace. And I think that's maybe where cricket needs to mature a little bit. And also, if you're a smart businessman, you would delegate that responsibility to professionals, because if you let your professionals run the team to the best of their abilities, then your investment will go up, because they're doing their best job without interference, right? So if you're a smart businessman, you would just do that anyway.
You would. What I find, I think what must be frustrating for some of the players and coaches, and I think it's quite clear there's a bit of a morale problem at KKR, is that there's no accountability when it goes wrong. Like I thought that's what I read from Shreyas Iyer saying that, was that like he was frustrated tactical decisions, strategic decisions being taken out of his hands and maybe the coach's hands and the people that are the cricketing people, and those decisions being made by somebody else, and him kind of being left to carry the can and have a team that has some talent in. He probably thinks it has talent. From his point of view, he probably thinks it's talented enough to be in the playoffs. We'd maybe argue with that. But he's now got a team that are, bottom feeding and have got like a part-time leg spinning wicketkeeper opening the batting and sort of all sorts of crazy stuff like that. It must be quite. I think it must be pretty.
Yeah,
I think it happens probably more in football than people expect, though. I mean, like the geezer at PSG. Like nobody can tell me that there isn't like a huge amount of chicanery and backroom backstabbing and stuff that happens there, and they are.
There's a reason the managers keep leading PSG, isn't there?
Like Real Madrid and Barcelona, it definitely goes on there as well. I think the Premier League might be slightly different, but yeah.
I mean, I've actually spoken to coaches about this before, and probably the best quote I had from a coach that I obviously can't name, who has coached in the IPL but doesn't currently, is you're paid a lot of money to shut up. Was the exact
Sounds good. Sign me up.
Yeah. I genuinely think that this is a really good example of where a well-run team would gain so much in terms of efficiency.
Mm-hmm. And the bit I want to. There's one more point around this because let's be fair, the Gujarat game and the other game, not exactly the most exciting things to talk about. But on that, we talked in the auction and the auction strategies around a captaincy tax. And we on the show have we've talked many times around the impact of a captain on a team. And what this kind of lays way to is that why spend that much money on someone like Shreyas Iyer? If you're going to take those decisions out of their hands, you're going to do that kind of stuff, why would you then spend a bulk of your auctions or your auction purse on that?
Okay, so here's my take on that. Based on my personal experiences, at least, is that when the recruitment is done at the start, and then also at the start of the tournament, the owners won't be as prone to interfering. Mm-hmm. It's only when it goes wrong that they start interfering. So I mean, obviously I don't know what happened with KKR at the auction and their think tank and stuff, but I would my default assumption would be that they bought Shreyas Iyer with good intentions for him to run everything, and then because it didn't go well at the start, then it all got kind of torn up.
Yeah, I thought at the start, actually, they looked like a team with a plan. They won 2 out of the first 3 games. I thought, it's not the most exciting cricket, but they at least had a game plan. And then they decided to play, I don't know, Yahtzee with their team lineup. It didn't make sense. If you're a Kolkata fan,
Chakravarti turning into a pale imitation of himself.
Mate, he looked good in the last game. He's got some motherly love. I told you that's what he needed. He's had some motherly love in his time off, and that's where he looks. Should we move on to Gujarat? Has he got any more points?
No, let's do
one more. Sorry. What did you guys think at half time in this game? Because I mean, Pommy and Bangalore very, very strong, and the fact that this 160 was not a below par total, and sometimes I think that when teams get these kind of middling totals, the commentators are quite prone to overstating the problem with the pitch, especially when you've got a bowl second and due as well.
I thought it was personally.
I thought it was about 15 below. So
I think there was a lot in that pitch. There was a lot in that pitch, and I think Warner batted pretty well, and I think Marsh had the game of his life. To be honest,
Trent Bolt looks unplayable for 3 overs.
He's done that before, though.
Yeah, but the ball was rearing around all over the place. Like people couldn't lay a bat on it.
The point is that they're one. They're not 1 wicket away, but I think it's very conceivable that they lose 3 wickets in the power play. I think that happens a lot in that game. The fact that they didn't. And what was interesting about the pitch, I didn't think there was a huge amount in it for spinners, which was kind of weird for Normally, the worse the pitch is, the more there is for spinners. But actually, I thought seam bowlers were, generally speaking, actually just looking at the numbers. Pardon?
8 for 1 off 9 overs from spinners.
Yeah, and then in the first innings as well, Colding maybe bowled all right, but the other guy, Aksha Patel.
I didn't see Ashwin's number as well. So it's actually 1 for was it 130 for spinners in the match?
Yeah, so I thought maybe it was a touch under, but I thought you were well in the game, and that's the value of having Dave Warner, right? Isn't it? Like, it's the value of having somebody who averages 50 in Test cricket. Is that if you have a little bit of a tasty power play, by the time you're in the 7th over, it's like playing Test cricket with a 50-over-old ball, isn't it? It's finished. And from there, 160 was never enough.
But also the other thing is that when you have Ashwin facing 38 balls at number 3, you have a situation where your best non-opener, Samson, is coming in with 35 balls left.
Yeah.
That was really fucking weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, we were surprised that he didn't come in at 4 when Padikkal came in. But then again, you'd be saying you're wasting Padikkal and he's not going to come in and hit it at the end. But that is inherent in what you said about batting Ashwin at 3. He's probably not supposed to face 38 balls at 3, is he? That's not the plan.
What's he supposed to do? Well, that's what nobody's really been able to tell me.
Yeah.
It was on 20. Wasn't he off about 25 off like 10 balls or 9 balls?
He did actually a couple of.
Yeah.
Maybe
And he should bat under the arm. He's done it before. See, I've done my job, Jatch. Sanju, it's your job now.
That's what I don't really get about the tactic. But I don't know if that was. I mean, I think that was just like, I don't know, maybe a couple of shots came off or a bit of luck or something like that. Because then he just carried on scoring singles for ages. Yeah. And then you saw him panic and try the weird batting stance, and then he sped up again. Yeah, and then he sped up again. I was watching it, and I was like, look, it's not for the same reason as, well, maybe not. It's not really the same, but it wasn't a game-ending innings for Rajasthan on that pitch, I don't think. But I was sort of thinking, why exactly are we watching this and not Sanju Samson? Sanju Samson comes in with fewer balls remaining in the innings than Ashwin faced. It was like,
But again, this is one of the consequences of them not replacing Nathan Coulter-Nile in an effective way, right? They're forced to do stupid shit.
We've managed to get 30 minutes out of that game. Do you want to talk about something else?
Yeah, who wants to summarise the Gujarat Titans' victory over LSG?
Oh, I actually watched this.
Well, I'm going to get a beer while you do that.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right, yeah. So yesterday, Gujarat batted first, and they got 144, which didn't seem like very much, particularly when they'd only lost 4 wickets. Shubman Gill, he played an innings, and it's really kind of weird in hindsight to talk about this, because at the time the overwhelming feeling was like, why do you keep doing this? Hit the ball in the air, do something interesting. 63 off 49 is a proper Babar Azam of an innings, and you might have lost your team the game here. Tuatia sort of salvaged it in the last over with a few boundaries. I say salvage, got them up to like 140, like an instant loss, or didn't feel like an instant loss. Then Lucknow came out, well, I don't know. I guess they showed everyone how difficult it was to bat on this surface, and it not helped.
Breathe, to exist.
Oh, yeah, it was
to form sentences. I mean, what were they doing?
It was odd. They were sort of strangled. Strangled is probably the word I would use. Rashid Khan was too much for them. It was nice to see Sai Kishore get a game. People have been wanting to have a look at him, hadn't they? He's a guy with a sub-6 economy rate in the old SMAT.
The SMAT.
Yeah,
that's good
because they've got Rashid Khan and Tuatia, he's sort of bumped down the list. I feel like he'd have been a bit more of a regular player at some of the other franchises. But it was good to see him in the game. He took a wicket.
Played for Mumbai.
He absolutely loved taking that wicket as well. He was like, veins bulging in the side of his head like he was a fast bowler, and actually he was just a left arm off. He span it past the edge and got a stumping by half the wicket because I don't know, because Krunal Pandya, who was it who was off to the races? Badoni, yeah, just completely forgot.
Ran away.
And they collapsed in a giant heap. It was kind of funny at the end. Avesh Khan hit a couple of sixes off Rashid Khan. It was nice for him to get one over on his brother. But Lucknow Super Giants, 82 all out. It wasn't flattering. I think I don't know with this one. I think it might just be one of those days for Lucknow to some extent. Like a lot of things that could go wrong kind of went wrong. King Legend, he broke out the ball eating. Not really sure why he decided to do that, but I don't know. I think actually, you know what? I think this is how today could have gone. Very easily could have gone for Delhi. So if we were going to be a little bit more generous to KL, Mohammad Shami's been decent in the power play this year. He probably thought, get through the power play. 144 is never enough runs, even with Rashid Khan in the middle. We'll win. We've got Stoinis down the order, Holder down the order, Badoni, and he got out and put people under pressure a little bit. And I don't know. It was at half time. I will ask you a question, Ross. At half time, did you think that's the Titans I was expecting to see this season?
Yes, it was. That was exactly. It was exactly the batting performance I thought. There's no. I reckon nobody has predicted that this Gujarat Titans team. And Dan, didn't you get a good comment in from Twitter earlier around Gujarat Titans?
Yeah, let me just find that. Even though this is from Abhishek, even though Gujarat is top of the table, don't you think the team has more weaknesses than strengths? And yeah, I mean, there's certainly a pretty decent case for that, I think. I don't look at their team on paper and think that they're a title-winning team. I'm going to be really honest. But obviously they've won games, so you can't really argue with that. Whether they would be top in a 100-match season or even a top 4 in a 100-match season is certainly for me like very, very up for debate. But yeah.
It's quite incredible how Hardik is very much tailed off, hasn't he? He started off really well. I think now there's another question around his fitness. He's not really bowling.
He's definitely injured. He's definitely injured. Like it's not.
I'm trying to be nice.
He barely fields.
Yeah. He's like Ledley King, but not as good as Ledley King.
Ledley King was an unbelievable footballer.
I know. As a Spurs fan, I know how good Ledley King was. But you look at this team.
I don't really know how they've won this game. I mean, well, I do. They can bowl, and they're trying to maximise their strengths, right? They realise they've got a lot of weaknesses, but actually the tale was we're going to try and maximise our strengths, and they've had. That's fair. They've got some big name players, big game players. Sorry, and they've had, they've had so many games which has been kind of 55%, 45%, and they've managed to always seem to tip the balance in their favour, which is fair play to them. But look at it, like Shubman Gill's innings, it's at the strike rate of less than 130. But on here, it was Jack. I think you said in a Discord chat saying that actually I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Gill because I reckon it's a bit of a dodgy pitch. I think just it's pretty marginal still, isn't it? It's about a whole innings on that.
But if someone turns around and goes, right, the strike rates of the top 6 are 45, 128, 142, 84, 108, and 137, and you've got that team won the game, you're like, fuck off. Like you're taking the piss. Like. And this just wouldn't happen. And yet Lucknow come out and they've dropped Ravi Bishnoi on a pitch which would have suited Bishnoi down to a T.
What happened here?
Well, they just dropped him, I think. I don't think he was injured.
Oh, right. They were just like, I will get
We're going to play Karen Sharma. Don't know why. So if we might be corrected in the live chat, but from what I can gather, Bishnoi isn't injured. I think they're just a bit annoyed that he's not having the amount of output they thought he was going to have. But actually within this lineup, it's okay. I think Lucknow have actually got a half decent side together, but here it just didn't work for them. And I think you're right in saying it was just one of those games. Avish Khan again impressed. Mohsin Khan was okay. Just didn't come out for them.
I mean, the bowling's not the problem, is it?
No, not at all. I say Mohsin was okay. Mohsin was okay. He had 1 for 18 off his 4, so it's pretty good.
I don't understand where he came from because he never really did much in SMAP before this. So let's see if it's sustainable or whether he's just like had this massive career breakthrough.
Yeah, the only player that stood out for any runs, and it was pretty much a runnable 27, is Deepak Hooda. And Deepak Hooda's having I think he's having a pretty good season, isn't he? Like he's actually been one of the guys for Lucknow who's doing okay. But again, this is the feeling which you're kind of getting from this side that they seem to do enough to get them there. But I can imagine if you look at the stats across season, it's probably not a standout season for a number 3 or a number 5 of where he's batted.
Mm.
So,
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah.
Still, they're second. They're looking pretty solid for.
they're
for
through.
the
They're through.
playoffs.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and with Rajasthan, I was going to say with Rajasthan Royals losing today, they're probably pretty settled for top two.
Yeah, Deepak Huda,
Yeah.
347 at 130 is just to put in, which is all right, isn't it?
Not bad.
Yeah.
Decent, yeah, but not like well beaten, but decent, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't need to be well beating this year.
Well, no, that's the thing. I think that you look at the teams at the top, there's a kind of a common dynamic where they've either benefited from a lot of fine margins in matches, the variance has treated them well, or they've got obvious holes, but the performances from like their marquee players have just been so good that they haven't really been able to be exploited.
I think that's absolutely true. I think there's a little bit of a biggest kid in the playground dynamic with the IPL this year, in that the best players have been able to run amok, or the best players that have found form anyway have been able to run amok, and there aren't that many other big kids to sort of rein them in. Like it's once Josh Butler gets going, it's sort of like, well, let's see how this ends. Because once he's through the power play, it's like, okay, now we're just going to throw it to middle overs guy A. Really, cross our fingers and hope that this doesn't go too badly. And there's a few others like that. KL Rahul's been balling a little bit like that. Dave Warner gets through the power play, and then he's like, okay, who's on the buffet? What's the main course for me today? And then at the death as well, you've definitely seen that with some of the guys who couldn't properly hit.
Let's just look at Tuatia, right?
Tuatia, Hetmeyer, like a bunch
Ray
of
Russ.
these. It's
DK.
Most teams don't have two death bowlers to actually put pressure on them. So it's we got 10 off, or we got 7 off that over. It's really really well bowled, mate. Throw the ball to the next guy, and he's banged it in halfway down at 130 kph. It's quite a good shot.
It's quite good to watch, though, isn't it?
It is good to watch, but that's why I think there is a little bit of that dynamic going on, and I'm sure like some of these players that are being exposed to that for the first time will bounce back. Will work with the better players in their team and the coaching, and they'll be in an environment which is where that assistance is probably available. But it is kind of funny to watch, Dan. I agree. Well, it is certainly a theme that I've noticed.
Reminds me a little bit of going to see Surrey in the Blast when Finch and Roy were opening, because it was just like every game Surrey were 100 for none of 9 or 10 overs, and then everyone else would come and have a go at batting, and they'd finish at 160 or something. It's just like the difference in quality is palpable. It's not quite that it's not quite that divergent in the IPL yet, but add another 4 teams and you might get there.
Well, I think that summarises the Gujarat title. The Ahmedabad boys win. They're through. Lucknow are pretty much through, aren't they? The final game was a dead rubber. It was KKR versus Mumbai Indians. Max, should I summarise this one?
Yeah, if you want.
It can be pretty. Actually, I'll do it really simply. Bumrah turned up. The rest of the team
didn't matter.
The rest of the team didn't. That was pretty much the summary. Bumrah took 5 for 10 off of his 4 overs. Venkatesh Iyer finally had a bit of form. And Bumrah taking 5 for 10, and Mumbai Indians still lost. They still managed to
just like to reprise what you said earlier. If I tell you that one team's bowler took 5 for 10 off 4 overs and they lost, you'd say fuck off.
No, it's not just lost 52 runs.
Sorry, lost by 52 runs. Yeah,
they honestly had their pants pulled down.
It's like a 4-day match. So guy scores 250 for his team in the first innings, and they go and lose by an innings and 200 runs. So that's basically the equivalent.
It was absolutely staggering. It was good to see Venkatesh Iyer bat like we saw Venkatesh Iyer last year. We thought that he might have a breakout season and then probably go down a little low and hopefully come back up. And that's maybe what we're seeing here. Could be an anomaly. But when you have a team that's done this, it is absolutely staggering. Like the Mumbai Indians, I think we might have talked about it on the show before, but we're so used to how the Premier League operates in terms of managerial sackings and where the blame lies, etc. This Mumbai Indians team, Sam Allardyce was in the dressing room 6 games ago. It's staggering how they've let this team completely stagnate. And Jai Wardner is still there, Rohit Sharma's still captain, and fine. But there probably should have been a change, and we realise that it's not as knee jerk in this. But I reckon you'll start to see some of that knee-jerk actually probably sneak into something like this, especially if the Ambanis are involved in the team selection, which, based on the previous conversation in the podcast, maybe it's so.
Did you think Mumbai ever had a chance of chasing down 165 with the team they picked?
No. Ramandeep Singh doesn't. No, Pollard.
He averages 12.8 at a strike rate of 115 in 2020 cricket with the bat. Pollard doesn't exist anymore, and then they had some bowlers.
Yeah, Jack has used me as a litmus test. In the last pod, Jack was using me as a litmus test. I reckon I'm averaging. I'm doing all right. I'm doing it as well as Ramandeep Singh. I reckon.
You reckon?
I reckon. Yeah, I'm backing myself.
That is so funny, isn't it? I mean, Sky's out for the season as well, so it's completely.
Yeah, I mean,
this was Mumbai Indians' chance to maybe not finish bottom, but they're going to deservedly finish bottom.
They're done for.
Ishan Kishan pretty much almost carried his bat, didn't he? For his, he must have been like, "What is going on around me?" But again, just a really disjointed performance. Knight Riders again picking almost a completely different team here.
Sheldon Jackson.
We're back to square one in a way, aren't we? Here. I think this is Billings didn't play. He was in the first Billings for Cummins, and is that exactly the team they had, or was Rinku Singh out for?
Rinku Singh wasn't there. Yeah.
So we're back to 9 out of 10, and they're almost all in the same in the original order.
Yeah,
which is 3 keepers at various stages this year. They still haven't really made up their mind who.
Well, it's ridiculous, isn't it? They literally almost hadn't picked a wicketkeeper when it came down to the last couple of selections in the auction. Them and Gujarat Titans were like, "Oh fuck, we need to pick one." So they ended up with Riddiman Saha and Matt Wade.
I mean, I don't mind Riddiman Saha. He's a good keeper and he's experienced. He's had a good season. The problem obviously is that he's old, so he's not going to do them for very long. But as a panic buy, Riddiman Saha, far from the worst.
I think he's probably the best gloveman India have. Based on what we've seen, it looks like the best gloveman that they've got.
He's definitely a better panic buy than Sheldon Jackson.
Oh, but there was loads of people before. Maybe sometimes on cricket Twitter we get talked about there's cricket hipsters. People go, Sheldon Jackson might have been one of those. Oh, he's actually really good. I know so much about him. Rubbish, not good enough to make it this step up. Just not good enough. Baba Indranath, also, I'm just as good of a cricketer as he is.
Yeah, part-time keeper, part-time spinner.
Right, we've got batsman. With Dan, I think some people actually sent some questions to you, so I might just get you to read them out and answer them yourself. But we had a super chat in from Sadiq, which I think is a good way to kind of bring the IPL section of the show to a conclusion. What would be, it's for all of us, what would be all of your ideal top 6s in the IPL? For Dan, without Punjab players. How about we do this in the round? Dan, you can go first. Pick. Dan goes, Max goes, Ross goes, I go, Dan goes, Max, you can have the top 6, and we'll right. pick our top 6. No Punjab players.
Joss Butler.
Was it me next?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed that bit. I don't know. Who would you? We thinking? We got Ishan Kishan. I don't know. Yeah.
You have
not this year.
Right, lads. Right. What we're going to do? Max could be referee because
I've had a stroke.
Yeah, Max is on umpire duty. Max is picking the umpires.
Well, look, we can't have all 4. We can't have 4 overseas players in the top 6.
You could have KL Rahul.
I could have KL Rahul, and I will have KL Rahul. Thank you.
You could also have David Warner, who is Dave Warner is striking at over 150, an average of 61.
Oh yeah, that's what I should do. Just have the stats up. That's an easier way.
Well, far be from.
No. Wait, I know. Sorry, is my homing pigeon going to come in and tell me what the fucking answer is? He's saying, Max. I think, Jesus. When we do the quiz at the end of the year.
Yeah,
Jack,
I've had one of them.
he's had one of those moments.
Yeah.
He's had one of those moments.
KL Rahul.
KL Rahul is a nice selection.
Yeah.
I'm saying Liam Livingston for me.
He plays for Punjab, so you've just blown your own.
Yeah, but I'm allowed to. Dan's not allowed to pick him. I'm allowed to pick a Punjab Kings player, aren't I?
I don't know. Max, you're the referee now.
I don't know who else super chat.
Right, okay, fine. I'll have Dre Russ come in at 6 for us.
You're picking number 3.
You have to pick a number 3. They have to pick a proper order.
I could back David Warner at 3, can't I?
You want?
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take the Bull at 3.
I better balance it out with an Indian, hadn't I? Tilat Varma.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Is Sky out because he's injured?
Yeah, he didn't play enough games. Back to you, Dan, for the crucial number 5 position.
Because he batted at 5 today, which I think is a waste, I'll go with him, Sanjay Sampson.
I thought you were going to go Rassi van der Dussen for
Virat.
Go on then, Max. Let's see if you can redeem yourself.
Well, I feel like the only man you could pick at number 6 is the Doob. I mean, Ross said it. I think Dre Russ is probably the right way to go.
Have we
got enough space for that?
Yeah,
I think Dre Russ, because you got the bowling option as well. So you got to think about that.
Yeah, I think notable mentions obviously have to go to Livingston, who we couldn't pick. I think Chapati's had a good season.
Yeah, agreed.
DK.
Pardon?
DK, yeah.
Sure. DK.
He'd be number 7.
He'd be number 7. Yeah, there we go.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, I can't believe Hetmyer wasn't picked. Yeah.
So I mean, Tawatia this year, like.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll do this kind of roundup where we kind of pick some of these 11s. But I think it's a great question.
That sounds like a Patreon special.
Fran's had a good year, though.
Pardon?
Fran's done all right this year. Devon Conway were making a late entrance.
But we did think that he might be kind of bargain of the season. Actually, he went for 1/7 of the price that Faf du Plessis did. So he's doing all right.
Sudeep says, best money I've spent. This is hilarious. Dan, you had some questions on Twitter, and we were talking about them pre-show. Do you want to read out what they are, and we'll have a little debate?
Yeah, sure. So the question from the wonderfully named Bulls 23 to 45 says, given the hit and miss nature of T20, are the teams better off just recruiting all-rounders 1 to 11?
Can I go first and say probably not? I think there's still. We had a really interesting question about this in once. Would a team of all-rounders beat a team of specialists? And I know I was talking about this with somebody on Twitter. Somebody sent me a DM and was like, "What do you think about this team?" They'd come up with an 11 of all-rounders and an 11 of specialists, and it was pretty hard to call. I think the best specialists are still better, largely speaking, than the best all-rounders, and so I'd want to do that way. And you could probably, I'd venture as well.
Who's keeping wicket for the all-rounders? That's an
all-rounder. Yeah,
from
a can you actually build this team point of view, you could the 10th best specialist batter is still going to be a pretty good specialist batter. The 10th best all-rounder, that could be a bad player. It goes downhill quite quickly. I think anyway. I don't know, what do you reckon, Dan?
The player pool issue that you raise is a massive one. I mean, there's not even 10 good all-rounders in the league. So how do you really do that? Pretty tricky. Also, I think that the all-rounders tend to lack sort of specialist bowler skills, such as death bowling, for example. So the team of all-rounders is going to get absolutely pumped at the death. There's probably a couple of other things as well that I would say. All-rounders tend not to open the batting as well. Or bat, like I can say, in the top 3. It does happen sometimes. But I think the better solution to it actually is that you find you look for bowlers who can hit, a la Rashid Khan, for example, and you look for batters who can bowl, e.g. Moeen Ali or Liam Livingstone or people like that, because those guys actually give you a super amount of flexibility in your team planning, Like, you can go in, if you've got 2 bowlers in your top 6, or 2 viable matchup bowlers in your top 6, and then you've got 7 to 11 5 bowlers, of which 2 or 3 can hit, you back down to 9 and you've got 7 bowlers. That's great. That's all you need. You don't need any more than that.
There we go. And what was it? Was there another question?
Yeah, there was a little bit. I mean, Nick George asked one about why is Ashwin being batted at 3. But I think we've kind of gone with that already.
We still don't know is the answer.
Yeah. The
answer's on a postcard.
The Shepherd, who I think asked us a question last week.
Oh, Romario, yeah.
It may or may not be Romario, yeah. He asks, what is Baz McCullum doing in England's test setup? Have they lost it, with a brain emoji next to it?
What an amazing pivot. We're going to talk about that. That's going to be the rest of the show. So that's it for the IPL. Go for it, Dan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically he hasn't been confirmed as England coach yet, although
BBC have jumped the gun.
Pretty inevitable. Yeah. I don't really understand it, because I mean, yeah, he did okay at KKR last year, but they certainly haven't pulled up any trees this year. Whether that's down to him or not, we have literally no idea. I worry. I like it in some ways, because I think that he's very different to the kind of stale old sort of coaches that most people are probably expecting.
Mm-hmm.
But he hasn't had any Red Bull coaching experience. He's very close with the Owen Morgan, the white ball captain, and that worries me, because I think, is it another job for the boys? Is it another friend of a friend who's got a job? And I don't like that. And I think that I read the job description. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I read it at the time it was available, and I'm pretty sure it asked for kind of a proven track record of success as a coach. And honestly, I actually think he could do all right, but he doesn't have that. So we're already going away from the job description straight away.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like an appointment that's so rogue that if it works, you're gonna be called a genius, but if it doesn't work, you're gonna get absolutely slaughtered.
He said Smith 4D chess.
It's a bit like somebody you need to go to the used cars dealership to buy a new family car, and you go along and you've been told you need to get something like a Ford Mondeo, 4 doors, not too many miles on the clock, and you get there and the geezer's like, oh, well, you got 12 grand. Well, you could get the Ford Mondeo, or there's this 1994 Porsche with 2 doors that you could have for the same price. And I feel a bit like we've sort of gone for the Porsche here. Now, who knows? Like, maybe it turns out that the Porsche, it works as a family car. Like, your kid's the most popular kid in school because Porsches are cool. Your wife likes riding around with the roof down. It all comes together. On the other hand, like, it might be a bit tricky for getting a football training. That's my kind of vibe with this. It is like a.
When it breaks down, it's going to be expensive.
It's a wild card thing.
Yeah, when it breaks down, it's going to be expensive. It's pretty much the perfect way of putting it. Ross, what do you think of Baz? You're a big Baz fan, aren't you?
I like people who have a good identity, and I like people who what they're going to get. Like Dan, with you, from our experience of podcasting with you and interacting with you, we know what you're about. We know what your view on cricket is. We know what your philosophy is, and actually you're consistent in that message. And I think actually there's a lot to be said for having that conviction in your belief. And I think when it comes to Brendon McCullum, I think he has had that. I think that he
Really?
was it was a good turning point for England when we lost to New Zealand, and the relationship you talk about with Owen Morgan is potentially a negative thing. Actually, it might well be a positive thing.
But yeah,
I'm not.
you can see it both ways for sure.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Owen Morgan's going to end up being back in the Test team. I can't see that ever happening now.
So funny if it did.
It would be hilarious.
For Middlesex, he was horrendous.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I do like that. And English cricket fundamentally is in a pretty weird place right now. I think from the Test cricket side of things, they have probably made this appointment based upon how are we going to get some excitement back into the red ball game. I think the attritional cricket we're not suited for that. We've got players who are actually more focused on white ball cricket. Have we got someone in Brendon McCullum who actually is going to create an environment which the team might go out and blitz 600? We might get 60 all out. Who knows? So it could be really exciting.
1 to 11 of intent merchants.
And who knows?
Test 20 cricket.
What I think you'll get from McCullum, and I think I don't know if there will be like intent merchants. That's not necessarily what New Zealand did. That's what McCullum did, but that's not necessarily how New Zealand got good at Test cricket. I mean, nobody's
strong role definition, real clarity on how they wanted to play.
Yeah,
and they exploited their home conditions really well and knew kind of how to play away.
But I think that's all true, and I think McCullum actually was involved in setting the groundwork for some of that. What he probably also benefits from is being in an environment where New Zealand or New Zealand cricket as an institution made the transition from sort of also runs to World Test champions. Like they in 2005, 2006 were not a particularly impressive Test team, and now they are the World Test champions. And Baz McCullum, he was involved in that process. He was the captain for part of it. Now, was he the decision maker that decided that they would improve their pitches across the boards to make New Zealand domestic cricket more like Test cricket? No, obviously not. He was the captain, but he will have been part of that conversation. He will have seen how that vision can be translated into reality. And so this is a big if. We don't really know what Rob Key wants to do or what the ECB's end goal with the Test team is. But if it is something like this New Zealand model, he's probably not a bad person to have around just to provide that kind of voice or just challenge ideas that may go away from that. And I think probably from the player point of view, I'd imagine he's pretty well respected, and he's probably I don't get the impression he's not a Justin Langer type character, is he? I think he's probably more on the express yourself end of the spectrum.
I tell you what,
and I think that might help England, to be honest, because it's a pretty high pressure job.
Yeah, he's quite intolerant of failure, which I like. I do think that if you can't change someone,
we're bringing back the England roundabout.
But the other question I think regarding this, or a big red flag, I would say, is that I think he's going to need a really, really good head selector, because I wouldn't have thought that his knowledge of county cricket would be outstanding.
It's an understatement.
Is he going to know his Harry Brooks from his Zach Crawleys or James Bracey's from his Dan Lawrence's and stuff like that?
He probably doesn't know his Harry Brooks from his Kel Brooks, to be honest, does he? Like it's
Weston.
Harry Brooks was called Jack Brooks the other day in one of the newspapers. So I got a picture of Jack Brooks as well. So yeah, I mean, so even English newspapers don't know who Harry Brooks is, which obviously is insane because he's done incredible this season. And I actually think there's a decent chance that he'll get a call up pretty soon.
I think. Can you imagine Justin Langer doing a Netflix TV show with Phil Tufnell? I can't. I'd watch that though. I'd watch that over Brendon McCullum. When it comes to that, at the moment, let's see what it's like. Right, I think Stokes is probably the right choice as captain for now, as Jonathan Agnew said. I read that. I bought myself to read that article. What a bore that bloke is. Honestly, just miserable.
I thought that was pretty harsh. I mean, like, I think it's a reasonably widely held view, isn't it? That there's the potential that Ben Stokes as England captain could go wrong.
Definitely.
There's probably more potential it goes wrong than with Joe Root in charge.
Yeah. But there's also the acceptance that there's literally no one else.
But I think that's it.
It's definitely a decision with a greater standard deviation on both sides.
Yeah, but like, I don't think as your column, the BBC Test Match Special columnist, who basically only writes about the England Test team. I don't know if your first article can be like, it's okay for now, but I expect this to end in failure. Basically,
in the last Test match, genuinely in the last Test match, Ben Stokes gave a present to Jonathan Agnew and said, "You're the Richie Benno of English cricket commentary," and it literally fucking does him a cropper first.
Wow.
Yeah, well, that's what.
Well, he's advocating Cullen County cricket. Some teams in county cricket as well. So,
yeah, Dan's going to lose his job if Agnew gets his way.
He's not on my cricket card list right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm more in the camp that Jonathan Agnew should lose his job rather than anything else.
I mean, like when England failed at the World Cup, do we like? I know what we'll do. We'll get rid of League Two. Yeah,
that is the problem, right? That is the problem.
The league do need to be doing more.
They're not doing enough to prepare our budding young stars on loan from Man City.
The problem here specifically is Bristol City. Like, if we could just get rid of Bristol City Football Club,
everything will be fine.
AFC Wimbledon.
Hey.
I mean, to be fair, Max, they got rid of themselves.
Yeah, shit.
Can we just? So I think the McCullum thing is. We'll probably cover that in a bit more detail ahead of the first Test match of the summer. We've just had a super chat from RK saying, "How much should we read into Pujara's 700 runs in the second division? Enough to be in the one-off Test in July." I think the England selection point is really interesting of who we'll end up picking. Pujara, surely he has to play. Surely the whole reason him being at Sussex
100%
is that he's there. He has to play.
Yeah, it's only Div 2, right? But
we've got Pujara tomorrow for 4 days at Leicester. So
looking forward to it.
Try keep him to batting less than 2 of them.
Put out a dust bowl.
We were hoping we might restrict Shan Masood to under 100, and he got 200 something.
Shan Masood's looked absolutely class. I think if Sussex bat first, which I'm hoping if Leicestershire win the toss, they'll be like, we'll just bat first. I mean, is Brian Lara's score in danger, Dan, at Leicestershire on that?
In all seriousness, I will say that I think that there's a genuine chance of an overreaction towards certain overseas players this season in county cricket, because Pujara has been at several other counties and actually not done particularly well. And what I think has happened this summer, not really this summer, it's this spring, isn't it? Is that we've had like the best batting tracks you could ever wish for in April. Like, it just basically hasn't rained. And it didn't really rain in March either. So
thanks, global warming.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, this is very untypical for English conditions in April, and I think it does suit someone like Pujara. This kind of dry flat tracks are gonna be benefiting him, rather than typically in Division 2 you're gonna go to Durham on the first week of April. It's poured down with rain for the whole month before. It's about 5 degrees in temperature. It's going to rain for half the match, but it doesn't matter because the game's going to be done in 2 days anyway. And I mean, go away at Durham in April is like the equivalent of like, can Lionel Messi do it on a windy Tuesday night in Stoke? And it's like Chris Rushworth like nipping it around the whole, and that is a different ball game. And we've seen this season in county cricket that those kind of like the 75 mile an hour guys who rely on movement, they're really good at hitting an area, very, very consistent, but they lack pace. They haven't had such a good season this season compared to previous years. So I think that there's a lot of condition argument for Pujara, but I mean, honestly, he couldn't have done much more, right?
Yeah. They're not worth.
You also have to
test
consider
match
it's basically, I was going to say, you have to consider it. It's a one-off test. Like, how much time is India going to spend coming over here and trying to get ready for a one-off game? It will probably be in, play, out, And if you've got a couple of guys or a guy who's been around in England for a few months in the lead up to it, absolutely make the most of it. Chuck them in there.
Right, are we ready to wrap up the show?
I just want to come back. I've in the background, I've been trying to answer the question on if you were to choose an all-rounder 11 in the IPL, what would it potentially look like?
Okay.
Abhishek Sharma opening up. I've got Moeen Ali at 2, Deepak Hooda at 3, Glenn Maxwell at 4, Kieran Pollard at 5, Dre Russ at 6, Tawatia at 7, Rashid Khan at 8. Couldn't decide between Krunal Pandya and Ravi Jadeja at 9. And I've got couldn't decide between Wanadu Hasaranga and Sunil Narayan at 10, and then Shardul Thakur.
What about Venkatesh Iyer?
I was going to say, what about Venki Iyer opening up?
I've just given you fucking 14 names. the one turned around. Fine. So Abhishek Sharma or Venki. So that team might do okay.
Was Livingston on the list?
Livingston also not in there. So we've so out of all the things,
it's quite an expensive team, though, isn't it? Like that's a Rolls Royce team.
That's about 10 teams' purses.
That's all-rounder in Stoinis.
Yeah,
you've got Stoin.
So there's loads of all-rounders.
Either.
No,
how can you forget that after today?
Yeah, exactly. So there we go. So what we're saying is there's plenty of options. You could do it, but it'd be very expensive.
I think if you picked go on.
Where's the dude, man?
I think it would be really interesting. They should do this once off, like a 6-5 split of specialist batters and 5 bowlers. Just the best, and see who would win that. I think it'd be quite interesting. Some games.
Did I dream this? Because I might have dreamt it. At the start of some IPLs, they did a best of 11 versus the previous champions.
Now you're thinking about the Victoria Park Community Cricket League.
I thought it did an All-Stars game.
I want to see England first team T20
yeah,
against England's second team, England's third team, and England's fourth team in a round robin group. And I would put money on. Well, I'm not allowed to put money on it, but if I could, I would reckon that the England first team would not come top, or would have a good chance of not coming top.
Fourth team, smash it.
What a thought experiment to leave you with. Thank you ever so much for listening. Dan, thank you ever so much for joining. Where can they find you?
I'm on SA Advantage on Twitter, danweston.substack.com.
Yeah, no rebranding yet of the Dan Westerner meter, but maybe one day. Thank you for listening. Sign us for Patreon / Cricket Podcast, and like and subscribe to this video, and rate us on Spotify and iTunes. Goodbye.
Cool, well done.